Fortunately, some are born with spiritual immune systems that sooner or later give rejection to the illusory worldview grafted upon them from birth through social conditioning. They begin sensing that something is amiss and start looking for answers. Inner knowledge and anomalous outer experiences show them a side of reality others are oblivious to, and so begins their journey of awakening. Each step of the journey is made by following the heart instead of following the crowd, and by choosing knowledge over the veils of ignorance, and thus begins their journey of illuminating the darkness.
Hello, and welcome back to Illuminated Darkness. Very happy to announce that we're now available on YouTube and we have our own YouTube channel. So, hope to move into some video production here soon. Looking forward to that. As always, we're available on Apple Podcast, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcast. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and always at our website at www.illuminated-darkness.com. And you can always email us at admin@illuminated-darkness.com. And as always, all information presented in this podcast is solely for entertainment purposes and no copyright infringement is intended. In 2003, author Dan Brown released his bestseller, The Da Vinci Code. This book was the second in what has become known as the Robert Langdon series of books: Angels and Demons, The Da Vinci Code, The Lost Symbol, um, Inferno. I believe there's another one, I'm not sure. But the plot of this book was the Merovingian kings of France were descended from the bloodline of Jesus Christ. And this implicated that Jesus Christ was married and had children. And according to the legend and the story, the person he married and had children with was Mary Magdalene, the woman who had been labeled a prostitute and a fallen woman. Now, this proposed alternative history caused quite a stir among religious scholars, historians, and the Catholic Church. So join us as we delve a little deeper into this best-selling novel and try to determine, is this fact or is it fiction? Let's start off by taking a look at the basic plot of the book. It's based on the assertion that Mary Magdalene was married to Jesus Christ and bore a child, and that she was eventually worshipped as a goddess. Now, when Jesus was crucified, Mary was pregnant with their child, and she allegedly fled to Egypt, where she gave birth to a daughter, whom she named Sarah. Sarah would be the only living descendant of the royal bloodline of Jesus. Brown drew from a legend that in AD 42, Mary and a 12-year-old Sarah fled to southern Gaul in the south of France. And it's here, according to the book, Sarah marries into a French line of kings known as the Merovingians, who ruled until AD 751. So, how do we get from there to Da Vinci? The Priory of Sion, the Knights Templar, Opus Dei, the Holy Grail, the Last Supper, the Louvre, Rosslyn Chapel, Westminster Abbey, the Temple Church, Sir Isaac Newton, Leonardo da Vinci, and all the rest. In the first few pages of the book, it's written that fact. The Priory of Sion, a European secret society founded in 1099, is a real organization. In 1975, parchments were discovered in the Paris National Library known as Les Dossiers Secrets. And this identified numerous members of the Priory, including Sir Isaac Newton, Botticelli, Victor Hugo, and Leonardo da Vinci. Now, did it actually exist then? Was Da Vinci a part of this? Was Newton? Was Botticelli? Victor Hugo? Don't worry. We're going to take a look and see what we can find out. Now, the biggest question is, did Dan Brown create this myth legend that got all the scholars so up in arms? The answer to that is no. There are numerous books. Holy Blood, Holy Grail is one. The Bloodline of the Holy Grail, the hidden lineage of Jesus revealed, the Sion Revelation. There are the Magdalene Legacy. There are numerous books, and I mean, if you go to Google, you can type in books about the bloodline of Jesus or the bloodline of Christ, and it will kick out numerous titles. And I've actually read a couple of these. I've read The Bloodline of the Holy Grail and Holy Blood, Holy Grail. I've read both of them. And they give some pretty compelling arguments about this. So now, where do we start? Well, let's start by taking a look at one of the main groups that kept coming up over and over again in this story, which is the Priory of Sion. Now, the Priory was founded as a fraternal organization in France in 1956 by Pierre Plantard, and this was Plantard's failed attempt at creating a neo-chivalristic order. And in the 1960s, Plantard began claiming that this self-styled order was the latest front for a secret society founded by crusading King Godfrey of Bouillon on Mount Zion in the Kingdom of Jerusalem in 1099, under the guise of the historical monastic order of the Abbey of Our Lady of Mount Zion. And as a framework for his grandiose assertion of being both the great monarch prophesied by Nostradamus and a Merovingian pretender, Plantard further claimed that the Priory of Sion was engaged in a centuries-long benevolent conspiracy to install a secret bloodline of the Merovingian dynasty on the thrones of France and the rest of Europe. Now, it was probably a surprise to Plantard when his claims were fused with the notion of Jesus' bloodline, which was popularized by the 1982 book Holy Blood, Holy Grail. And this is where some people believe Dan Brown borrowed from. Our next group that we look at is Opus Dei, and they're formally known as the Prelature of the Holy Cross and Opus Dei. And it's an institution of the Catholic Church whose members seek to implement Christian ideals in their occupations and in general society. We also have the Knights Templars. We'll get to them here in a little bit. And the first thing I want to remind you of, the Holy Grail is believed to be the sacred cup that Jesus drank from at the Last Supper. It's also believed to be the cup that caught his blood at the crucifixion. And while it is one of the most well-known symbols in Christianity, I mean, for crying out loud, Indiana Jones went and looked for this fucking thing. It's also Christianity's greatest source of myth and mystery. And despite its fame, no one can prove it has ever existed. If you look at the painting of Da Vinci's Last Supper, and there is a picture of that up on our website. If you look at the Last Supper, there is not a chalice, cup, or anything on the table anywhere. So, if by some random off-the-wall chance that Leonardo da Vinci was a Grand Master of the Priory of Sion, knowing the actual secret of the Holy Grail, would that be why he wouldn't have painted cups on the table? And I don't think if you look at any rendition of the Last Supper, is there a cup on the freaking table. So let's take a look at some of the basic facts behind the Priory of Sion myth. And according to the legend, Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene. He wanted her to lead his church after his death. After the crucifixion, Mary Magdalene instead absconded to France with one or more children and found a home in the local Jewish community. There's another legend that says they actually had 2 sons and not a daughter. By the 5th century, a member of Jesus and Mary Magdalene's sacred bloodline mated with one of the earliest kings of the first royal house of France, who themselves were descendants of ancient Israel. Okay. Members of this secret bloodline helped launch the Crusades and conquer Jerusalem. They failed at that because the Muslims retook Jerusalem, and we'll get to that part of the Templars' history in a little bit. The priory also searched for and found ancient relics such as the Ark of the Covenant, the bones of Christ, and the Holy Grail. Well, the Ark of the Covenant, and some scholars believe that it's somewhere in Ethiopia, and we're going to save that for another episode. The Bones of Christ, that's a new one on me. And, well, we're talking about the Holy Grail right now. Members of the Priory helped the infamous Knights Templar who served as the warriors of Christendom throughout the Middle Ages. The two groups split in 1188, but the Templars remained under the Priory's control. Okay. When the Knights Templar was destroyed in 1307, the Priory of Sion went underground for the next 600 years. That explains it. As a shadow organization behind other fronts. Well, that explains why. Whatever. The group's main goals included founding a holy European empire that would unite Europe. Well, that happened thanks to the Illuminati. Totally different story. We've already covered it. Replacing the Catholic Church with a state religion based on the Holy Grail and a Judas Testament. I don't know nothing about that. Establishing an anointed king of Greater Israel. Okay. The Priory of Sion theory also managed to involve nearly every other conspiracy theory imaginable, including the Rosicrucians, the Vatican, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Order of the Golden Dawn. Doesn't surprise me. The theory is also said to have had inspired the most infamous anti-Semitic conspiracy of all time, and that is the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. That is a completely different episode that we will get to at a later date. So if we go back to the Dossier des Secrets and look at the alleged past Grand Masters of the Priory, and actually in the research I came across two separate lists. And this is the first list, and I'm going to apologize right now because I don't speak a lick of French. And trust me, that was really difficult when you are in France for 3 days. Hugo de Blancheford, Bernard de Tremblay, Guillaume de Chanelis, Everard de, and the last name was omitted, André de Montbard, Bertrand de Blanchefort, Philippe de Milly, Eudes de Saint-Armand, Arnaud de Torges, Gerard de Redford, Jean de Geysers, Marie de Saint Clair, Guillaume de Geysers, Edouard de Bar, Jean de Saint Clair, Blanche Devereaux, a golden girl, that's funny, Nicolas Flamel, René d'Angers, Ireland de Bar, Sandro Felipe, also known as Botticelli, Leonardo da Vinci, Charles III, Duke of Bourbon Montpensier, Ferdinand de Gonzague, Michel de Nostradam, also known as de Nostradamus, Duke de Longueville and Nicolas Formentiu, Louis de Nevers, Robert Flood, Johann Valentin Andrea, Robert Boyle, Sir Isaac Newton, Charles Radcliffe, Charles de Lorraine, Maximilien de Lorraine, Charles Nodier, Victor Hugo, Claude Debussy, Jean Cocteau, and Pierre Plantard. Now, the dossier alleged that the Priory of Sion and the Knights Templars always shared the same Grand Master until the cutting of the elm, which was a diplomatic altercation between the kings of France and England in 1188. So there was a second list of Priory Grand Masters, and this list is shorter, and there's names added and omitted. So we have Jean de Geysers, Marie de Saint Clair, Guillaume de Geysers, Edouard de Bar, Jean de Bar, Jean de Saint Clair, Blanche Devereaux, Nicolas Flamel, René Angers, Iodot de Bar, Botticelli, Da Vinci, Contebel de Bourbon, Fernando Gonzaga, Ludovico Gonzaga, Robert Flood, J. Valentin Andrea, Robert Boyle, Isaac Newton, Charles Radcliffe, Charles de Lorraine, Maximilien de Lorraine, Charles Nodier, Victor Hugo, Claude Debussy, and Jean Cocteau. And so now Plantard's been taken from the list. So we go back and we see, where the dossier says, hey, Grand Masters of the Priory of Sion and the Grand Masters of the Knights Templar are always the same. I'm calling bullshit right off the bat on that one. Because the Grand Masters of the Knights Templar are as follows: Hugues de Paynes, Robert de Crown, Everard de Bars, Bernard de Tremblay, André de Martblanc, Bernard de Blanchefort, Philip of Milly, Odo of Saint Armand, Arnauld of Torgia, Robert of Ridgefort, Robert of Sabel, Gilbert Horel, Philippe de Plessis, William of Chartres, Pierre de Montaigu, Armand de Perigord, Richard de Bourges, Gilborn de Somac, Renaud de Vincers, Thomas Bernard, Guillaume de Bourgeau, Thibault Gaudin, I'm guessing, and Jacques de Molay. They don't match up. There are some similar names, but they are not all the same names. So there's lie number one with the Priory of Sion. They share a few Grand Masters with the Knights Templar, but they don't share Grand Masters at any of the same time. So the dossier actually came from a Henri Loenbieu, and they were allegedly compiled by Philippe de Toscan du Plantier, and it's a 27-page document which was deposited in the French National Library on April 27th, 1967. Now, the document purports to represent the part of the history of the Priory of Sion, and it's considered a forgery to be created by Plantard. And 13 of the 27 pages from the document are taken from another document attributed to Henri Loenbieu, which is dating from 1964, also thought to have been authored by Plantard. And it's called The Genealogy of the Merovingian Kings. And this document contained genealogy diagrams which apparently showed Plantard to be a descendant of Merovingian King Dogbert II. What a name. So, allegedly in this document are maps of France and Merovingian genealogy, newspaper clippings, a letter, and there's no way to guarantee it. An obituary, there's no way to guarantee that this document is what it says it is, and there is really limited history of the Priory of Sion. There's actually really nothing before 1099. And there's nothing from 1099 to the 1960s. So I gotta call bullshit on the Priory. That's where I gotta call bullshit at. But would the bloodline of Jesus still exist? And while the actual existence cannot be confirmed or denied, the ultimate notion of a person living a millennium ago and had a small number of descendants still living is statistically impossible. And if you go through Amazon, shit, I bet I could trace it far enough back. I'm a descendant of the Merovingian kings. But, it's... My mom said to me one time, it's faith. If your faith is strong in it, then you're going to believe it. If your faith is not strong in it, you're going to question it. And then you have me, I question every damn thing. Is the Holy Grail a bloodline? Now, according to the authors of Holy Grail, the legendary Holy Grail is simultaneously the womb of St. Mary Magdalene and the sacred royal bloodline she gave birth to. And the church tried to kill off all remnants of this bloodline in their supposed guardians, the Cathars, and the Templars in order for popes to hold the episcopal throne. Now, let's take a look at the Cathars real quick. The Cathars were true believers in the south of France, and they were exterminated by order of the Pope. And they just, they were kind of like the Amish of the time. They lived by the Bible, they lived by the Word. And some believe the Cathars died protecting this secret from the church, and from everyone. And is it true? Who knows? The Cathars did exist, and they were burned as heretics in 1208. They, all their records, their libraries, and testimony, and, they were tortured. Contemporary research indicates that they weren't evil, that Pope Innocent III said they should be. They were devout, chaste, tolerant Christians, and they loathed the material excess of the medieval church. Beliefs similar to theirs can be found in the Gnostic Gospels and eccentric teaching that were discovered at Qumran and in the Egyptian mystery schools. The Cathars called themselves the true Church of God, but they had no fixed religious doctrine. And the few manuscripts that survived the flames of the Inquisition were written in the provincial old southern French language, and the rest is in Latin. So, why did we kill off the Cathars? Wonder what they knew. Good question. I'd like to share with you an article that I found during my research, and this was from the Christian Science Monitor, and it's about the Lost Gospels, which is a book based on translations and interpretations of a 1,400-year-old manuscript. Now, that manuscript could quite possibly be either the Nag Hammadi, which is the Dead Sea Scrolls. And according to this article, it claims Jesus was not only married to Mary Magdalene, but he had 2 sons. And religious scholars stated that the interpretation of a 1,400-year-old manuscript written in Syriac and kept in the archives of a British library for 20 years holds no credibility. The article also states that scholars who have studied the document for the past 160 years consider it pretty unremarkable. Now, a professor of religious studies at Duke University stated on Good Morning America, "There's simply no evidence in this text or anywhere that Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene, much less that they had a couple of children." So it would appear that the idea that Jesus Christ was married previously surfaced in study in pop culture. Now, an ancient Egyptian papyrus known as the Gospel of Jesus' Wife has Jesus referring to "my wife," but it was written centuries after he had died. Here's my question. Why is it so impossible to believe that Jesus, like any other man, would have married, would have had children? We believe in little green men from Mars and other planets. We believe in ghosts and spirits, and we believe that when we die, our spirit goes to a magical place and we meet with this all-loving, all-knowing, all-seeing, omnipotent being, and that we get wings and a little halo. So why is it, we believe a man was born from a virgin with no sexual contact whatsoever. So why is it so hard to believe that a man, as Jesus has been described throughout millennia, was married and fathered children? So Holy Blood, Holy Grail suggested that Jesus and Mary Magdalene had a daughter named Sarah, and this was further popularized again by the Da Vinci Code and Avra's dream and the Maeve Chronicles. So is it possible that they did? There again, we just talked about belief and faith, and if you believe that Jesus was married and had a daughter, then Jesus was married and had a daughter. Let's take a look at the next group, the Knights Templar, and we have the Sangreal, which is the Sainted Grail, or Sangreal, or Holy Blood. Now, in Brown's version of the history, it asserts that the secret order, the Priory of Sion, was established solely to protect this secret bloodline of Jesus, and Brown claims that the priory formed the Knights Templar, the warrior monks, and they're sent to Solomon's temple to excavate the ruins to recover the genealogy of Jesus' descendants. And these documents they discovered are the Sangreal documents. And as the story goes, the novel suggests that using these scandalous documents, the Templars, extort money from the Roman Church. They become very wealthy, very secretive, and they're hated by the Church. And on Friday the 13th in 1307, King Philippe the Sixth of France attacked the Templars, torturing and killing their leaders and imprisoning their ranks. And of course, this is where the superstition of Friday the 13th being unlucky came from. The Da Vinci Code, has us imagining that a few escaped and fled to Europe, placing the Sangreal documents in safekeeping with the Priory of Sion. The actual history is when the Crusaders captured Jerusalem, the Abbey of Our Lady of Mount Zion was founded in 1099 in Jerusalem by Godfrey de Bouillon, who later became king of Jerusalem after the First Crusade. And it was the abbey, not the priory, that continued to exist until 1291, when advancing Muslims destroyed it. The few surviving monks fled to Sicily, where the community was extinguished in the 14th century. Now, in 1956, an occultic group borrowed their name to promote the legend of the Holy Bloodline. If you look, and I've read books on the Templars as well, there's no historical connection between a Priory of Sion and the Knights Templars. The Knights Templar were headquartered at the ruins of Solomon's Temple Mount in Jerusalem, hence their name. And in actuality, the Knights were founded to protect pilgrims coming to and from the Holy City, and they set up they were some of the first bankers. There's no evidence that their main function was to search for the hidden genealogies. When Jerusalem fell to the Muslims in 1187, the Templars lost their founding mandate, and by 1312, Jerusalem was back under Muslim control, and the Templars were disbanded by Pope Clement V. Now, Brown told this part of real history, but dismissed it in typical conspiracy theory fashion, saying it was all a cover-up and it was all a propaganda. There's actually no evidence that the Knights Templar ever found any documents as the book suggests. The Sangreal parchments are purely a fictional creation, and if you Google Sangreal, it kicks out results for the Holy Grail. Scholars agree that the rise in wealth for the Templars was ironically due to their promotion by the Church, namely Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. And it was not through blackmail. They did banking. You could deposit your money in a Templar bank in France. They would give you a note, piece of paper with, you deposited, so many gold coins into the bank on this date. And when you arrived in Jerusalem, you went to the Templar bank, gave them that piece of paper, and they gave you cash. It's no different than writing a check. They entered into the banking business, and they had amassed extensive land holdings and great wealth, and many people became indebted to them. King Philippe VI of France in 1307, what he did was not to suppress any type of scandalous secret, but because he was almost bankrupt. He wanted the wealth, so he wanted to strike a blow at the papacy, which he was having a pissing contest with. What else was new for the Middle Ages? In the Middle Ages, somebody was constantly having a pissing contest with the Roman Catholic Church. So, there. So, as the story goes, the documents were passed from one priory grand master to another, and the documents eventually end up in the hands of Leonardo da Vinci, who was a brilliant thinker of his day and a supposed grand master of the priory. And the book asserts that the maestro incorporates the codes into his many paintings regarding the Mary Magdalene secret. And the author imagines that the figure to Jesus' right in Da Vinci's Last Supper is actually Mary Magdalene. Now, if you look at it, it is kind of feminine, and there has been numerous documentaries about this. Now, the real facts are, among the many Renaissance paintings of the Last Supper, the youthful disciple John is always placed at Jesus' right. John is typically shown with long flowing hair, he has delicate features, and even in Da Vinci's own painting of St. John the Baptist, it depicts a young man with long hair, a very feminine features in the face, and it's the author's being subjective to see a woman. There's also no evidence whatsoever that Da Vinci was ever a part of the priory or one of its grand masters, as the novel claims. Historians and history says that Da Vinci was a loner, he preferred his solitude, and there's no evidence that he was involved in any secret societies whatsoever. And the author says, that Leonardo was widely believed to have hidden messages within his artworks. He's exaggerating. They say, no historian or scholar has ever supported such a characterization. And at the beginning of the book, Brown states that his description of the artwork and secret rites are accurate. Okay, if they are, that's awesome. But he doesn't back up his claims. He just has his interpretations. So there's that. Now, then, we hear talk of the Council of Nicaea, and they say the council, the assertion, at the core of the novel, is the assertion of the sacred divine female and the divine generative power of women. Much of the story focuses on feminine goddess worship, male fertility beliefs and rites, and symbols of phallus and chalice and whatever. Read the damn book, please. Okay, and because the book doesn't focus on that. It's a murder mystery. Okay, I'll give you the gist of the book. A guy is found dead in the Vatican, or not the Vatican, excuse me. A guy is found dead in the Louvre, in the museum, right in front of the Mona Lisa. He has, in his dying moments, he's laid himself out as Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, and he has used invisible ink, for lack of a better term, to write different cryptic messages that can only be read by a black light. The messages are read, and thus they think Robert Langdon has killed him, he's named his killer, and they start chasing all over Hell's Half Acre trying to figure out what the hell is going on. That's the book in a nutshell. It's a murder mystery. Or is it? Is the question. In 1944, ancient first century writings were found. These are the Gnostic Gospels. They're unorthodox accounts, but they're there. And the Gnostics were not mainstream people. No, nobody says that, they say the Council of Nicaea did not determine what books went into the Bible and what books did not. Bullshit, they did. They determined what was going to go. What was going there. And it was the Roman Emperor Constantine that said, no, you're doing this. This is what you're doing. Have a nice day. So, with that being said, in France, there is a, dating back from the 9th century, there is a shrine that includes a statue of a girl named Sarah. Brown suggested that this is Jesus' daughter, Sarah, who settled in France with Mary Magdalene. Now, they say that serious scholars have long believed that this Sarah represents a servant girl brought from Egypt. The statue depicts the girl with very dark skin. Actually, the church commemorates the belief that two Marys settled here, one the sister to Jesus, and the other mother of James and John, not Mary Magdalene. Now, think back to when you went to Sunday school. What did Jesus look like? What did Ricky Bobby say when he prayed? Well, 5-pound, 8-ounce, blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby Jesus. Bullshit. Where was Jesus from? Middle East, possibly Northern Africa. All the artwork we see of Jesus is an artist interpretation. I looked. I researched. There are little to no physical descriptions of Jesus' physical characteristics in the Bible, except for Book of Revelations, chapter 1, verses 14 and 15. His head and his hairs were white like wool, white as snow. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and his feet like unto fine brass, as if they turned on a furnace. And his voice was the sound of many waters. Therefore, it's reasonable to assume, given where he was from geographically, that Jesus was dark complected, with dark hair and dark eyes. Why is that? Because the Romans weren't friendly to brown people. How about that? They didn't like the brown people. My. What a tangled web we weave when we practice to deceive. So, there's that right there. So why couldn't this statue of Sarah be Jesus' daughter? Why? Why not? So why is there so much controversy about the Last Supper with this? Mary Magdalene, there is so much controversy surrounding the attendees of the Last Supper. The Bible states that only Jesus and his 12 apostles were present. However, some believe that Mary Magdalene is depicted sitting next to Jesus in Da Vinci's work. Early church leaders downplayed Mary Magdalene's influence. Earliest followers of Jesus, they traveled with him, witnesses to the crucifixion, and one of the first people to learn of the resurrection. Who was it? It was Mary Magdalene. She traveled with him. She was at the crucifixion with his mother, and she went to the tomb. It was the women. Over centuries, everyone from early church leaders, scholars, novelists, filmmakers have revised and elaborated on the story of Mary Magdalene. On one hand, they've downplayed her importance by claiming she was a prostitute, a ruined woman who repented and was saved by Christ's teachings. On the other, some early Christian texts depict her not just as a follower, but as Jesus' trusted companion, which some interpret as his wife. All four of the canonical Gospels of the New Testament, with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, noted Mary Magdalene was at the crucifixion. The Gospel of Luke discussed her role in Jesus' ministry, listing her among some women who had been there, healed of evil spirits and infirmities. Now, according to Luke, after Jesus cast 7 demons out of her, Mary became a part of a group of women that traveled with him and his 12 disciples, groupies, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom of God. Magdalene is not a surname. It identifies where Mary came from, Magdala, which was a city in Galilee, which was located in the northernmost region of ancient Palestine, which is now northern Israel. So, okay. Robert Cargill, an assistant professor of classics and religious studies at the University of Iowa, says Mary Magdalene is among Jesus' earliest followers. She is named in the Gospels, so she's obviously important. There were apparently hundreds, if not thousands, of followers, but we don't know their names. So the fact that she was named is a pretty big deal. Why would they name her if she wasn't important? Was it, "Hey Jesus, who's that?" "I don't know, some random chick." No, 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 no. They knew who she was. After Jesus' crucifixion, which she witnessed along with several other women at the foot of the cross, and after all of his male disciples had fled, Mary also played a key role in the story of the resurrection. According to the Gospels, she visited Jesus' tomb on Easter Sunday, either alone or with another woman who found the tomb empty, and that's according to the Gospel of John. Cargill points out the women are the ones who go and tell the disciples. They are the ones that discovered he had risen, and that is significant. In the Gospel of John, Jesus actually appears to Mary Magdalene alone after his resurrection and instructs her to tell the disciples of his return, which is John chapter 20, verses 1 through 13. So, So if she's just an afterthought and not important, why is she so prominently mentioned? Why is she such a big part of his life? Makes you wonder. Wonder. Now, for its part, the Bible gave no hint that Mary Magdalene was Jesus' wife. None of the four Gospels suggest that sort of relationship, even though they list the women who traveled with Jesus, and in some cases they included their husband's name. But with her, they didn't name her. Pope Gregory made it official in the 6th century that Mary Magdalene was not a prostitute. They forgave her that. So that's a plus. So our next location that we were taken to is the Louvre in Paris. And if you've never been to the Louvre, the building outside alone is beautiful. Don't ask me about inside. Couldn't tell you. We didn't go in. But here's what I do know. The Mona Lisa is about the size of a frickin' postcard. Okay? Just so you know. It's like an 8x10. And the Louvre is the National Art Museum in Paris. And it is home to the Mona Lisa and home to the Venus de Milo, which is the famous Greek sculpture with the arms missing. Just a little bit of Louvre trivia for you. So the Louvre Pyramid, and that was featured quite prominently in the book and in the movie. A long-standing rumor claims that the pyramid is exactly 666 panes of glass and is often associated with Satan. And this story originated in the 1980s from the official brochure published during the construction. This number was also published in various newspapers. One writer asserted that the pyramid is dedicated to a power described as the beast in the book of Revelations. Wrong. Actually, the pyramid has a total of 673 panes of glass, and that has been confirmed by the Louvre. So, in the novel, the pyramid is marked as the alleged final resting place of Mary Magdalene. It's where there's the pyramid, and then the inverted pyramid meets a smaller stone pyramid. And the inverted pyramid is a skylight in the Carousel du Louvre, which is a shopping mall at the front of the museum, and it looks like an upside-down, smaller version of the pyramid. Is Mary Magdalene buried here? Well, she might be. The book alleges that the remains are located under the Louvre, right under the peak of the inverted pyramid, which can be found in the shopping center, but that hasn't been confirmed or denied at any time. Some say that Mary Magdalene is actually in the crypt at the Basilica of Mary Magdalene, and this is a little town northeast of Aix. I guess. I don't know. I don't speak French. The basilica is in bad shape. Some renovation has been done or is in progress, but much work remains. That's the first theory. The second theory is in 1279, King Charles II of Naples, nephew of King St. Louis, discovered the relics of Mary Magdalene during excavations in the basement of the Church of St. Maximilian de la Saint Baume. He uncovered several sarcophagi dating from the 4th century. And the remains of Mary Magdalene's body lay in Saint Sedone. They also say that for the last 30 years of her life, Mary lived in a cave in the St. Bon Mountains and was buried in the town of St. Maximilian. And none of those have been confirmed or denied. Hmm, Go figure. Another place the movie took us to was the Roslin Chapel in Scotland. And so, did Mary go to Scotland? Bearing in mind the claim from the early Christian Gnostic texts that Mary Magdalene was the constant companion of Jesus, and information also suggests that Jesus may or may not have visited the western islands of Scotland, it would be perfectly conceivable that Mary could have also visited the remote islands. So, Roslin Chapel. We saw that in the movie, and the chapel was founded by William Sinclair, or St. Clair, close to Roslin Castle, home of the Sinclair family. Building commenced on the chapel in 1456, and they say William Sinclair was a Knights Templar. The chapel was modeled on Solomon's Temple and was built to contain the greatest treasures of the Templars, including the Holy Grail. Well, newsflash, it wasn't. They say Sinclair founded the Masonic movement in Scotland to protect those treasures. He didn't. Another descendant of William Sinclair was the first Grand Master of the of the Grand Lodge of Scotland many centuries later. The Sinclairs are descendants of Jesus. That's never been confirmed or denied. And the most mysterious legend is that the chapel has underneath it, buried behind a stone wall, set back from detailed wall carvings, a Spartan stone crypt, and buried even deeper is said to be the treasure of the Knights Templar, which, there again, no one has confirmed or denied. So, where's the Holy Grail now? Well, it's said to be almost everywhere, but it's never been found. Some think it's in Glastonbury, England, Somerset. According to some sources, it's in Jerusalem. There are some that believe it's the blood of Jesus Christ that contains this power, only accessible to those who descended from him, with the vessel of the Grail being defined as his body itself, which the Templars uncovered in the Holy Lands. So they say. Why is it called the Holy Grail? Well, the word Grail, as it is earliest spelled, appeared to be an old French adaptation of the Latin gradalis, which means dish brought to the table in different stages of a meal. Late medieval writers spoke of the Saint Graal, or Holy Grail, related to an old French word meaning royal blood. So if the Grail is a cup, when was it last seen? Well, remarkably, the Holy Grail was recounted as located in Troyes in 1610. Unfortunately, the Holy Christian relic disappeared sometime during the French Revolution between 1789 and 1799. So, what is the Grail? What is it? Is it a lost treasure? Indiana Jones and his old man went looking for it, and they left it where they found it. It's a chalice, the cup from the Last Supper. Well, look at the damn painting. There are no cups on the table. A cup that caught Jesus' blood from the cross during the crucifixion. Okay, I believe that. But a lot of movies are based on scripture, and wasn't nobody holding a cup. Go figure. A secret royal bloodline, huh? That's kind of feasible. Here's a fun one. Does the Catholic Church have the Holy Grail? The Holy Grail is the cup believed to be used by Jesus, yada yada yada. It's officially recognized by the Vatican, and the Holy Grail is housed in its own chapel at the Cathedral of Valencia. Really? I doubt it. Oh my goodness. So is the Holy Grail real? Did Jesus and Mary Magdalene have children? It's a question that nobody's able to answer. And why can't we answer it? Because, like so many other things, if we were to know the truth, it would probably destroy us. It would ruin faith. all the way around. So there it is. I mean, did Dan Brown possibly hit on something that pissed so many people off? And then you go and you sell your movie rights to Ron Howard and he gets Tom Hanks to star in it. And, well, there's that. But I digress. It's possible. If Jesus was also a man, it is very possible that he did marry, that he did procreate. Are there descendants running around out there? No one knows. I'm sure if you were to trace it back far enough, but there's really no way. You can only trace to a certain point, and there's really no way to trace beyond that point. So, if there is a living descendant of Jesus Christ out there somewhere, I would love to talk to you. I would love to hear your story, hear your family's story. I'm not holding my breath. I'm not counting on it. This is one of those things you take with a certain degree of faith. And that's why you're listening. Because you have faith that some of the things I'm saying may be real. I mean, personally, do I believe? I believe that Jesus was a man who did extraordinary things. Do I believe he married and had children? It's quite possible. But I don't know for certain. I don't know if anybody knows for certain. That's all I got for you this evening, my friends. I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a very happy and prosperous New Year ahead as we prepare to embark into 2024. I wish nothing but the best for you and yours, and just as I wish nothing but the best for me and mine. I'm going to take a few days off, get some rest, much earned rest with my job and everything, and come back and start fresh in the new year. So hope to, like I said, move into video production soon. But until we meet again, my friends, keep your eyes and your mind open. And as always, try to stay out of the darkness.